Hi, welcome to today's webinar, How to Manage Your Spare Parts Inventory with the CMMS. My name is Stacy and I'm on the marketing team with Limble. I'm so happy you decided to join us today. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to cover some basic housekeeping items. All phone lines have been muted to maintain the sound quality of today's event, but I encourage you to ask questions via the questions box on your webinar screen, and we will get to them as we can at the end. We are also recording this session and we'll send out the recording tomorrow. If you joined us a couple weeks ago for our last webinar on 5 actionable strategies for overcoming maintenance challenges, you may remember that we ran out of time to cover one of the issues that our panel was going to talk about, which was around supply chain. We will likely schedule another webinar to dive into that in more detail. But in the meantime, we had planned to have this demo webinar as a follow-up to show how Limble can help maintenance teams with their spare parts inventory. Before I introduce our speaker, we do have a couple polls. I'd like to see if you have one central parts room or if you're spread out among multiple part locations. I'll give everybody just a moment to respond. Looks like we have a couple so far. We'll give everybody just a little bit longer. Okay, so far, looks like about 64% have multiple locations where they are storing their spare parts. The second poll that we have are, do you have a dedicated parts or procurement manager? Give everybody just a couple more minutes. We're about 50%. So if you haven't had a moment, please respond. Okay, so it looks like about 72% of you have a dedicated person in this role. So that's super exciting. Thank you, everybody, for participating. So now, without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce our speaker. Ken Kyle is a sales engineer dedicated to guiding maintenance professionals in understanding and choosing the most fitting technical solutions for their maintenance needs. With over 13 years of experience, he's played a pivotal role in implementing and training companies on various software platforms. In his free time, amid the delightful chaos of wrangling his 4 kids, Ken explores the world of emerging technologies and is a coder. Welcome, Ken, and now I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks you, Stacy. Appreciate everybody being here today, and I'm excited to go through this with you. It's not going to be super long today. I think we have about 30 minutes set aside, so we'll do about 20 minutes showing you how Limble, how you can manage your spare parts and your inventory inside of Limble, and some best practices and things like that as well. And we'll save some time at the end. I think Stacy mentioned this, but we'll save some time at the end for some Q&A as well. So if you have questions, throw them into the chat there, or yeah, I think we'll just collect them there and we'll answer those at the end. So there we go. You should be able to see this now. Now we're into Limble. So now what you can see here is I'm actually on my global dashboard, and that was going to be the last thing after adding a part to a work order and showing you how that gets pulled out of inventory, is coming in looking at some of these reports here. We'll spend just a brief time on that, and then we'll get to the questions here. So first things first, the parts screen. So the way that I have Limble set up, I've got 3 different locations here. You may just be one centralized location with multiple parts, parts closet, parts rooms, whatever it is. You may be spread out across the country as well. You also maybe just one location, one parts room. So in this case, I've got 3 different physical locations, maybe spread out across the country or maybe different cities here. I'm going to use this one, Vandalay Industries. Hopefully some of you will catch where that company's from. And from here, if you're familiar with Limble, this is where I can see my managed work, go to my tasks, I can manage my assets, but we'll focus here on our parts screen. So once I jump in here, this is where I'll be able to see all the parts that I have in this system. So you can see I've already uploaded some. It's pretty easy to go in and add a part. I'm not actually going to go through that today because we're actually going to dive in and look at a part. You can also have customized fields on these parts as well, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I just want to point out for those of you who are already using Limble, a lot of times when we're doing implementations or I'm talking with our users in the field, they don't realize that you can actually customize this window here. So I do want to point that out, that if you click on this button, I can choose what fields of my parts I actually want to display on here. And this is also customized to the user who's logging in. So maybe you as just a manager or a line manager wants to see one view and your parts manager wants to see a different view. Each of you can customize that view yourself. Okay. So obviously I've got a lot of parts here as well. I can also see my current quantities. I can also see parts that are reserved. So when you see that icon here, it just means that there is an active work order that has not yet been closed that has a part associated with it. So whether it's a preventative maintenance or a reactive work order, if I, as a technician, have added a part on there, it'll show me in my inventory that I've got something reserved. And I can even click on that and see exactly what task is associated with that there. Okay. Before we jump into one of these parts and dive in deeper, I also want to point out the search functionality. So I can come in here and I can maybe look for a filter, and it's going to show up and see everything with that name on that as well. So that's one area to do that. And also from our main screen, you can just do a global search here where I can specifically say, hey, I want to see this part, where you can look up that exact part. Or if I even look in the task, it'll tell me which task that part has been used or any assets that are associated with those parts. So lots of ways that we can actually use this search functionality to find what we're looking for, whether we're looking for something in stock or we're looking for a historical usage of that. So there's other ways. There's reporting where we can see histories, but this is also just a quick way to find what we're looking for and just typing in, organically what you have there. So let's jump into these parts, and it doesn't look like there's questions yet though. So I'm going to jump in and continue here. And again, if you do have questions, throw them in the chat and Stacy will let me know. Okay, let's go to this air filter here. I've got this a little bit built out. I've used it a couple times on some of my work orders, and this is your main screen. This is your centralized location of everything that I need to know about this part. And the nice thing that you'll see here, in addition to these basic things like, hey, what's it called? What's our part numbers? How many do we have? If there's anything that you want to keep in here that is unique to you, we can add a field, or you can add a field and create these custom fields and either reuse them on multiple parts or just for specific ones. So whether or not you want to do additional pictures, upload user manuals, sometimes that is a big deal depending on the part. You want to have that kind of information uploaded in there. We can certainly do that. If there's any dates related to that and you want to get notifications about certain things and reminders of dates coming up about these parts, you can set those on there as well. So any fields that you want, as many fields as you want, we can load that on the screen here with you for you. I'll come back to the quantity in a second here, but I also, before we start talking about the usage of these parts and how to get them out of inventory and things, I want to briefly mention these top tabs over here as well. So vendor list, you can actually see our vendors right here, but we can list out our vendors and designate which one is our primary as well as secondary and additional ones as well. So we can keep track of their part numbers. So as you notice here, I can keep track of my own internal part number, but then I can also have the part numbers from the vendors themselves, track what their most recent prices are, And that way, when we go to use them, or if we need to order them, we know automatically who we're going to order from, and if they're out of stock, who an alternate vendor is to go to for that. Same thing with this assets tabs. It's just a list of everything where we've used this in the past. So I can manually associate these assets, which is a good thing if you want to do that, if you know what they are. But the nice thing is if you're new to Limble and you have a lot of parts, this may take you a lot of time, resources that you don't necessarily have to be able to go in and manually choose, okay, on this part, which asset does it go to? And then you can go through and find all the parts that I've got here and figure out and manually associate them. However, Limble will automatically do that for you as well. Just how that happens is as I'm closing out my work orders, if I'm adding parts, it's automatically going to recognize that this work order with this asset had this certain part used. It's going to automatically associate those with those. So again, you can do it automatically or manually associate that. And then finally, we'll come back to this after I go through the work order process, but a log and the reporting, we'll close up with those. So I'll come back to those tabs here. Okay, so back to this info tab. You notice here we do have a quantity. So this is a live quantity field where we can actually see what's happening. This is a dynamic field as well. If you just manually enter it, it's going to tell you how many you have and at what price. But also we can break this down if you are using the purchase order system, or if these quantities are automatically synced to your accounting software, we'll be able to see exactly what quantity was at which price. And so as you're using it, this is especially for larger companies, something that is often requested is, well, I want to associate the price that I purchased it at, and we've got different prices depending on when we purchased it. So you can choose if it's first in, first out, last in, first out. As that comes in, we'll know exactly where we're at in the stage for that quantity. So as you're using that and you're consuming that part, it's going to associate the cost of that part as we're pulling it out to what the historical was for that exact one. So when we're looking at our cost of repairs, cost of servicing, it's all going to have that accurate pricing there, not just a generic or an average price. So it will give you the exact price of that part. I'm going to answer that right now. It looks like a question came up. Can you see price history development of the individual vendors? That is one thing. If we go through here and change these prices, we will see that in the logs. So I'd be able to go through, and as those changes, I can do a quick search, or I can filter this to a specific type, and I can track what those changes were. So I can go back historically and say, okay, I know that Granger is this price now. What was it a year ago? What was it 2 years ago? And we can go back and see that way. Absolutely. I hope that answers your question. If not, if I need to clarify, throw that back in the Q&A and we'll come back to that. So thanks for asking the question. Okay, lastly, on this screen that I want to show you here is minimum quantity thresholds, maximum thresholds, and how do I get alerted if I'm below my inventory, my reorder point here. So if we just come up to these settings, and you do this for every part, and by the way, I will say you don't necessarily even have to do this one at a time. We can do this on an Excel file and just upload all those if you're wanting to manage these all at once and get that into the Limble system here. So when I come to these settings here, I can choose my minimum threshold, my maximum threshold, as well as a stale threshold if that's something that's important to you as well. So if you want to be notified if maybe you've got a high ticket item that hasn't been used and you want to either get rid of it or figure out something else to do with that, we can alert you when that happens. So in this case, right, for this filter, I'm just being notified when I've got less than 10 in inventory, and it's going to notify me when I'm at that reorder point. So if the technicians are doing their job, adding their parts to their work orders, your inventory count should be up to date. And then when you get to that point, whoever you've designated here will receive that task to reorder that. So whether it be a manager, parts manager, whoever you want, we can designate that assignee. So what I'm going to do, actually, I need to note that on my agenda here is I want to show you how now we can get it out of inventory and what that looks like. And then we'll come back and I'm going to show you what one of these tasks for the reorder point looks like. I'm just adding that to my notes here. Okay, so let's go into a task that I've already created. So we're just taking the assumption now that I'm a technician. So I'm going into my manage work screen. and I'm going to be Tim Watley here. He's got a quarterly inspection. He's got to inspect this forklift. Again, this can be any asset. He'll go through this inspection, and this is just totally generic, but let's say we come to the point where, okay, I need to add a filter. I wasn't going to add a filter. I'm just inspecting it, but now I've realized this is something I need. Let's go in and add that. So super easy as a technician. Obviously, I'm on the desktop side or browser version. It'll look exactly the same on the mobile version as well. Just a little bit more condensed, easier for them to read on the mobile as well. But the way that they use this is exactly the same. They're just going to hit this green plus button here. I've got a couple options when I do that, and I'm going to click on Add Part. So in here, I can see every part, and my permissions are right now set up where I can also see parts across locations. So let's say this one is across the country. I can see what they've got in stock as well, but that's also permission-based as well, where you can limit that to maybe a technician only sees what we've got on our location, but a procurement manager or somebody else maybe can see what they've got across the country or the entire organization as well. So in addition to finding it this way and going through a long list, and you may have hundreds of parts that I don't want to scroll through, I can also view my associated parts. So any parts that have been used on that asset, I can specifically see that in here as well. And I can select, for example, this oil filter. Of course, if you want to go even further, I can search this and just search for filter, and I can see exactly what's coming up for me here. Lastly, one view that you won't see here because I'm on the browser view, but it will come up in the phone, is QR codes or barcodes. We do have a scanner associated with the Limble app. So you'll have an extra button that will come up on the phone where it'll open up my camera and I can scan. So if I'm in my parts room and I know this is the part that I'm taking out, and maybe there's 10 that are similar to it, I want to make sure I've got the right one. I just scan that. It automatically finds it in here for me and adds it to my work order. So again, that works both with a QR code, so the 2D barcodes as they're referred to sometimes, or just a regular traditional barcode that can be uploaded as a field and recognize what we're looking up there. So hopefully that helps. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and click on, I'll just do this regular oil filter here. So once I've added that, I can see I can change my quantities. I can maybe add something else. Maybe I'll do one more here. And let's do an air filter as well. So once that is completed, oh, I don't want to refresh it just now. So once that's completed, I can go ahead and complete my task here. You'll notice because I haven't hit complete yet, this is going to be marking those as reserved. But as soon as I hit complete, it's going to reduce that quantity for me. There, so that's the technician. That's all they have to do. They do their regular job, click off what they need to do, and just add that part there. How are we doing on time? Perfect. So just for these last 5 minutes, a couple things that I want to show you here is that reorder ticket as well, and the reporting. Actually, one thing I did forget, I do want to bring real quick is on those parts, because I mentioned the barcodes and the QR codes. If I come in here, I'm just going to grab this AC motor. I can actually print these off in bulk as well or individually. So if I've added this, I can just come up here and there's my QR code that I can scan. I can put it on a label, put it on my shelving, wherever I need to there as well. If I want to do multiples, I can just click on this, select all of them, and then I can even customize these print options and choose exactly what types of labels that I want so that it's really customized to how it works best for you. We get those on there, and then again, technician or yourselves, your managers, can just scan those in or out. Yeah, I do want to close that. So like I said, the last two things here, I'm going to go in and show you what a work order looks like for the reorder point, and then we'll go over reporting and then turn it over to any more questions if you have any. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my manager's work screen, and I do have one here. Actually, I've got a couple here where I've got a notice. It's been sent to the manager like I requested, where I can see a minimum threshold has been hit. Here's what needs to be done. Of course, I'm a great manager. These are almost a month old, but we'll go ahead and order these. So let's do just this belt here. So if I come in here, I can see exactly what needs to be ordered. If I click on this belt, it'll actually open up a new tab where I can view all the details of that That way I can still stay open on this task, but also be able to reference that if I need to. But the nice thing is Limble will automatically give you a lot of that important data. For example, here's what's currently in stock, what's currently reserved. Here's my reorder point. So I'm currently under stock by 2. And then here's my default vendor that I can order from. So at this point, there's a couple ways. So you can either go through your own procurement process where you're going to order those, or if you want to go through Limble, we give you the option to just start your PO right away here. And as I click on that, it's automatically going to generate that. So if you have questions or if you want to see more about the POs, certainly ask. We can do another session on that another time, or you can just reach out to one of us and we're happy to demo that for you. We just isn't in the agenda today to specifically go over purchase ordering. So once we've done that order, we'll just go ahead and mark that complete, and we'll go from there. Default order quantity, I'm seeing that on the QA. Yes, absolutely. So that order quantity is actually set by your maximum threshold. So whatever you've got that threshold set at, by default, it'll order you back up to that point. If you want to override that and just say, it doesn't matter what I'm currently at, I always want to order 50 or I always want to order 25, we can do that in the background settings as well and set that up for you. So good question there. Okay, so finally, last thing here is reporting. We've got all this data. We know what we've got in stock. We know what we've been doing. How do we actually track what's coming in and out and what our inventory looks like? So I'm going to go for this example. I'm going to go back to that air filter, and we're going to start at the ground level. We'll do the 5-foot view, and then we'll zoom out to the 5,000-foot view here. So this should look familiar. Oh, that was the oil filter. I want to go back to, where is that air filter? There it is. Got a little bit more data in this one. So we already kind of previewed this log a little bit, where we'll be able to see any changes that have happened. If it's come out from a task, if I've manually made any changes, it's all going to be tracked in here. And like we showed before, I can search through that, or I can even filter different types of things so I can see that history. The reports tab now is where we can see what's my historical data look like. So in total, I've used this part 13 times. Here's a total cost that I've spent over those 13 parts that I've used, as well as your stale status. So if you've got that over the stale threshold, we can see, okay, how many days now are we over that as well? And how often are we using that? So great for if you're going through and you're wondering, hey, this is the part, it's getting a little dusty. I've never seen this. We can look it up. We can see, okay, here's the last time we've used this. Here's what it belongs to, and really be able to help you organize that and really get rid of some of the parts that you don't necessarily need or aren't using. Here's my forecast. So if I've got any preventative maintenance schedules that are built out that have parts associated with it, we'll be able to see what that looks like, how often we're using it going forward in the future, as well as all the tasks previously that we've looked at. And by the way, these reports are dynamic, so I can actually click in here and see, okay, that 25. Oh, I apologize. Those ones aren't on our assets. They are on these ones. I can click into it and see specifically what's coming up. So in that case, right, I can click on those as well as our filters over here. Best way to start from scratch, vendors or parts? That is a great question. I'm gonna hold off on that for now. So Stacey, remind me. I just want to finish out on the reporting side, but then we'll come back. That is a really good question there. Okay, so that was the 5-foot view of the part reporting. If I go to the global dashboard, most of this is obviously going to be geared towards your task, but I do see in my cost of operations, one of these breakdowns from our total operating cost, we can see parts. Again, I can filter that by locations and dates and things like that, and I can click into here and see what parts we're using. But if we want to get more specific, our custom dashboard, some of you are familiar with, if I come in here, I've got a dashboard specifically for parts. So I can see at a quick glance, here's what I've got in stock, here's what I've consumed. We can choose those date ranges. So these are reports that you can have ready to go on the fly that are live. So right now I'm looking at all time, but I can say, maybe I just want to see this month, where are we at on parts consumed, parts in stock. And then we can also see graphical information with that as well. Like I said before, these are dynamic, so I can click in there and see a breakdown of everything that I've got. everything that we've spent. And it's super easy to set these up. And like if I go to edit this one, it's really just a point and click, and I can filter certain things out, especially with those custom fields that we can create. I can choose to include things, exclude things, and take them out of these reporting as well. So again, that was a quick version of our parts. We've just got a few minutes left here. So of course, if you have any questions, if there's anything that I haven't covered that you were hoping to see today, throw that in the chat and we'll ask away. So Stacey, I know that you've got some other questions that I believe were submitted that I don't see here. So I'm going to answer this one remaining. Then if you have some others, let me know and we'll go from there. But yeah, so that last question that came in was, what is the best way to start from scratch? Vendors or parts? So that's a tough answer to say because it is going to be come down to you as a specific user. I will say that in my time working with our clients doing implementations, it does tend to gravitate towards adding the parts first. So what would come in is as those are generated, or as those parts come in and are put into the system, whether manually by adding the part or importing these, we've got those to come in. Now, the nice thing is on that import, we can indicate who the vendors are on that. So it makes it really easy for each part to say who I'm ordering it from. But again, you can also organically do that as you're ordering. You can throw those vendors in on an as-need basis. But I would say it's just more common, I think, because people are more focused on what part do I have, and it's a secondary thing for what vendor I've got there. So hopefully that answers your question. If you need any more clarification, or if I misunderstood that question, throw that in the chat again. But I think that's the last question that I see. Stacey, do you have any more questions that were submitted?
Yes, we've got one. Does Limble offer anything for inventory counts? I'm not sure if you already actually addressed that or not.
Oh, I don't know. I may have mentioned it, but yes, that's actually a quick answer. We call it cycle counts. So this may be new to some of you here. Is super easy and straightforward if you want to just do a count of your inventory, because people are grabbing things without putting them on their tasks. Pretty simple to do a whatever time frame you want, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even yearly, where you can configure them or just see which ones are coming up. And it looks very similar to a task that is assigned to a technician. So I've configured a couple here. And if I go into this one, so this would show up as a task, and it's going to tell me, here's what I'm counting. So this is the part and where it's located and what the current quantity is at. So as I'm going to do my count, I can just type in what the exact count is and then go ahead and complete that. And it's going to automatically update my count there. So nice thing about this is I can also filter that when I do a setup. I can do maybe one per shelf, one per room, and I can filter out types. So as I'm going through, rather than having to scan each one as I go, it's in the order that I've set up that I prefer to have it. So I can just go in my line and just write it, and just really makes it super fast and easy and friendly. And as soon as I hit complete, it's going to update those orders for me, or quantities for me. Okay. And was that the only question, or were there any others?
I know we're just over time, but I would like to get to this one. They asked, can Limble integrate parts with our accounting system?
Yes, absolutely. So 2 ways to do that. So we have a direct integration already set up with QuickBooks and Oracle NetSuite. So if you're already with those, you can automatically set that up. We can turn that on, or your customer success manager, if you're a client of ours, can certainly help you get that set up. So what that'll do is your quantities, your vendors, all that kind of information can communicate back and forth. So it's really just one system where all your numbers are going to match up. So if you have anything other than QuickBooks or NetSuite, we do have an API where we'll provide that documentation where you can set up an integration. So often that's used for is not only just to make sure quantity parts are up to date, that when I'm adding a part, it's going from one direction to another. So if I add a new part in Limble, it goes to my accounting, or vice versa. And then of course with POs. So if I'm ordering something, that is a very common one, is Limble, you can create that PO and either send it directly from Limble to your to your vendor, or they'll create the PO in Limble that automatically sends it to my internal team, whether it's procurement or accounting, and they'll complete the purchase process from there. So nice to have that automatically come between the two systems there. Okay. Any other questions or anything else, Stacy, that I haven't covered that you think I should go over here?
No, I think you've done an amazing job, Ken. Thank you for answering those questions. We haven't had any additional come in, so I think it's safe for us to wrap. So thank you all for attending today's webinar. I hope you found the content valuable, and we will be sending out this recording should you want to revisit it or share it with a coworker. If you'd like to have a personalized walkthrough of Limble and have some additional questions answered and see if it's the right solution for your organization, you can request a demo by clicking on the purple icon at the bottom of your webinar dashboard, or it's right there off to the right. Again, thank you for being here. There is an icon to the right. I think it's pink. That's a survey. I would appreciate any feedback you have on today's content. I read them all and I implement them into our future webinars. And be on the lookout for our next webinar here with Limble. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Bye.